The story begins on a remote, mysterious island, an island overrun by dinosaurs. A group of survivors, stranded and desperate, finally saw a helicopter approaching to rescue them. But just as hope returned, a monstrous mutated T-Rex, created through genetic experiments in a secret lab, burst out from the jungle and viciously attacked the helicopter, tearing it apart and crushing their final chance of escape. No one in the outside world even knew they were trapped there. Years earlier, back in 2010, this island had been home to a top-secret research facility where scientists were conducting forbidden experiments, combining the DNA of different dinosaurs to create terrifying new species. Among those experiments was a mutant T-Rex, more intelligent and deadly than any creature before it. But one day, due to a scientist's carelessness, the beast broke free. As alarms blared and systems failed, chaos erupted, and the T-Rex brutally devoured one of the scientists right in front of his horrified colleague. After that catastrophic incident, the government shut down the entire project, declared the island off-limits, and forbade anyone from ever setting foot there again. 17 years passed. It was now 2027, and the world had changed. Some dinosaurs had survived and wandered the edges of human civilization, but the most dangerous species couldn't handle Earth's oxygen levels and were confined to a restricted island near the equator where the atmosphere was perfect for them. The government ensured that no human could approach. One morning, Martin, a powerful pharmaceutical company owner, was driving through the city when traffic came to a halt. A dinosaur had wandered into the middle of the road, and police were frantically trying to move it. After this unsettling encounter, Martin met Jorah, a fearless former elite agent who had faced death countless times. Martin had called her for a reason. He needed her skills for a mission unlike any other, one that could potentially save hundreds of lives. A lethal heart disease had begun affecting roughly 1 in 4 or 5 people, and Martin believed he could develop a life-saving drug from dinosaur hearts. To do that, he needed DNA from 3 of the world's most dangerous dinosaurs, which were located on that equatorial island. He offered Jorah $10 million to join the mission. Tempted by the money and able to secure her future, Jorah accepted immediately. Martin and Jorah then visited a dinosaur museum to recruit Dr. Henry, a renowned dinosaur researcher who knew a great deal about dinosaurs. On hearing Martin's plan, Dr. Henry immediately realized the logic. The huge size of certain dinosaurs meant correspondingly huge, exceptionally healthy hearts. Extracting molecular information from those hearts could, in principle, enable development of a cardiac drug that might save many human lives. For the formula Martin sought, they needed DNA from a water-dwelling Mosasaurus, a land-dwelling Titanosaurus, and a flying species called Quetzalcoatlus. With Dr. Henry enlisted, Martin and Jorah traveled to Suriname to meet Duncan, a man Jorah had worked with on many missions, and who could provide a boat and a crew to reach the island. At first, Duncan refused because of the danger, but when Martin doubled the fee, Duncan agreed to take them. They also met Duncan's associate Bobby, responsible for the team's security, and the boat's pilot Nina, plus another companion named Leak Creek, who would accompany them. With everyone briefed, Martin's team set out to collect the DNA. Their first objective was to obtain Mosasaurus DNA, which was 240 kilometers away. During the voyage, Martin showed Jorah the special darts he had developed. When fired into the bodies of the 3 target dinosaurs, these darts would automatically fill with DNA from the creature's tissues. The plan was to shoot each species with the appropriate dart, so the device would collect and preserve the DNA for retrieval later. The darts Martin had created used a special mechanism that allowed them to leap out of the dinosaurs' bodies and open tiny parachutes, so Jorah could easily catch them mid-air. But the real challenge was that the darts would only work properly if fired from a distance of 10 meters, a dangerously close range when dealing with massive predators. Despite the risk, Jorah agreed to do it. Later, she went to talk privately with Duncan. Duncan first brought up her late husband, Booker, who had died during a previous mission. Duncan still felt guilty and saddened by Booker's death. He then spoke about his own troubled marriage, saying things weren't going well with his wife and he only saw her when visiting his child. Jorah told him not to dwell on the pain, that maybe life would get better soon. At that point, they were only 75 kilometers away from the Mosasaurus territory. Meanwhile, out in the ocean near that same area, a small family boat floated peacefully. A man named Ruben was there with his younger daughter Isabella, his elder daughter Teresa, and Teresa's boyfriend Javier. They were simply out for a leisurely trip. Ruben asked Javier to steer the boat, but lazy and careless, Javier passed the task to Teresa and went below deck to nap. That angered Ruben. He worried about how Javier would ever take care of Teresa after marriage when they moved to New York. As Ruben was talking to Teresa about it, he suddenly heard a deep, terrifying sound coming from the sea. When he looked around, he realized a massive carnivorous dinosaur, a Spinosaurus, was approaching their boat. In the next moment, the creature attacked violently, overturning the vessel. Ruben frantically tried to open the cabin door to rescue Javier, but it wouldn't budge. The boat flipped completely. Ruben, Isabella, and Teresa managed to climb onto the overturned hull, while beneath them the Spinosaurus was about to devour Javier. By sheer luck, Javier forced the door open and escaped, surfacing just in time. For now, the family had survived. Elsewhere that night, aboard Duncan's boat, Jorah sat quietly, lost in memories of Booker. Seeing her sadness, Dr. Henry came over to comfort her, offering kind words that eased her grief a little before she went to rest. The next morning, Duncan's boat was only about 3 minutes away from the Mosasaurus zone when they suddenly received an SOS signal. It was from Ruben's family. Martin initially refused to help, insisting they didn't have time because collecting all 3 dinosaurs' DNA was crucial. But for Duncan and Jorah, humanity came before mission. Ignoring Martin's protest, they decided to rescue the survivors first. They soon reached the site and pulled Ruben and his family aboard. While they were catching their breath, Ruben described the monstrous Spinosaurus that had attacked them. Curious, he asked the newcomers why they were in such a dangerous region. But before Jorah could answer, Duncan's instruments began beeping. The sonar detected a massive creature very close by, the Mosasaurus. At once, everyone sprang into action. Jorah prepared to aim. Martin tried to calm Ruben's terrified family, and Duncan maneuvered the boat for a clearer shot. Jorah took multiple attempts to hit the creature, but she kept missing. At one point, she nearly fell into the water herself, but managed to regain her balance. Gathering her focus, she fired again, from exactly 10 meters away this time, and the dart hit the target perfectly. Everyone cheered as Martin's dart system collected the DNA and, seconds later, floated back up with its parachute. Dr. Henry caught the dart carefully, and Martin, overjoyed, hugged him in triumph. As Jorah placed the DNA sample safely into a protective case, Henry quietly confided in her that Martin planned to sell the medicine for enormous profit, so high that the poor would never be able to afford it. He suggested they secretly collect a few samples for themselves to ensure the cure could help everyone. Jorah seemed torn but didn't respond right away, because just then, multiple Spinosauruses appeared around the boat. They were likely after the Mosasaurus, but now they turned their aggression toward the humans instead. Bobby began firing at them to drive them back, but enraged, one of the Spinosauruses lunged forward and devoured him alive. The horrifying sight sent everyone into panic. Realizing they couldn't stay in open water, Duncan immediately steered the vessel toward a nearby rocky island, where the shallows would make it harder for the giant predators to follow. But there was a huge risk. The area ahead was filled with sharp rocks, and if they weren't careful, the boat could easily crash and shatter. Still, with no other option left, Duncan pushed the throttle to full speed and steered straight toward the rocky island. As the boat tore through the waves, the Mosasaurus, in a desperate attempt to escape the Spinosauruses, surged upward and nearly overturned them. Somehow, they managed to stabilize the boat at the last second. Seeing the danger wasn't over yet, Ruben told Teresa to immediately contact the emergency rescue team. Teresa ran to the radio to send an SOS. But before she could, Martin stopped her. He warned that calling for help would alert the government to their presence on the Forbidden Island, and if that happened, he would end up in prison. But Teresa, terrified for her family's lives, ignored him and continued to reach for the transmitter. In anger and panic, Martin shoved her off the boat into the sea. Both Ruben and Javier saw Teresa fall, but didn't realize Martin had pushed her. Thinking she had slipped, Javier dove into the water to save her, while Ruben, seeing that the boat was about to hit the rocks, grabbed Isabella and jumped into the water as well, hoping they could swim to shore before impact. Meanwhile, Nina and the other crew members hurriedly gathered all the emergency supplies they could and jumped overboard just before the boat collided with the rocks. Duncan, however, stayed aboard, trying to control the steering till the very last moment. When the boat finally crashed, it was smashed badly, yet Duncan miraculously survived. Soon after, Jorah, Henry, Martin, and Leekrick also managed to reach the same rocky shore, exhausted but alive. As Nina was pulling out the last of the supplies from the wreck, a massive Spinosaurus emerged from behind and dragged her screaming into the water. Everyone froze in horror. The monstrous beasts had now claimed 2 of their teammates. Elsewhere, Javier had managed to save Teresa and bring her safely to another part of the shore, where they soon reunited with Ruben and Isabella. Trembling and furious, Teresa told them the truth, that she hadn't fallen accidentally, but that Martin had pushed her into the sea. Enraged, Ruben and the others vowed to confront him later, but for now, survival came first. They moved deeper into the jungle to find shelter. At the same time, Martin and the rest of his group were also trekking through the dense forest. As they advanced, Martin realized something shocking. This wasn't just any island. It was the same secret facility from years ago, where scientists had once experimented with creating new hybrid dinosaurs. He soon discovered that this island still housed two of the species he needed, the Titanosaurus and the Quetzalcoatlus, meaning he could collect the remaining DNA samples right here. Jorah then explained that she had already arranged a fail-safe plan before starting the mission. She had hired a backup team who were monitoring their coordinates. If she failed to check in within 24 hours, that team would track their location and arrive by helicopter. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, there was a glimmer of hope. But Jorah quickly clarified that the rescue team would not land immediately. They would hover above until they saw a signal confirming survivors below, and they would only have 2 minutes to send that signal once the helicopter arrived. Martin, realizing how slim their chances were, grew anxious. He suggested they move toward the abandoned lab facility, believing it might still contain emergency flares they could use as a signal. The group agreed to his plan. They would first collect the remaining DNA samples, then head straight to the lab. As they followed a narrow stream, Jorah confronted Martin, asking how Teresa had fallen from the boat. Martin tried to make excuses, claiming it had been an accident. Jorah didn't fully believe him. She could sense his guilt, but without proof, she only warned him that if she ever confirmed he was responsible, she would personally make him pay for it. A while later, as Martin refilled his empty liquor bottle with stream water, something caught his eye, a pendant glinting beneath the surface. When he looked up, he froze in shock. A helicopter had crashed high into the trees nearby, its metal twisted and blackened, clearly the victim of a dinosaur attack. Martin, shaken, took the pilot's gun from the wreckage and rejoined the group silently. Elsewhere, young Isabella noticed a small mutated baby dinosaur wandering near her. Innocently, she began to play with it, but Teresa quickly pulled her away, frightened of what might happen. Ruben, feeling calmer now, turned to Javier, apologized for his earlier harshness, and sincerely thanked him for saving Teresa's life. As night began to fall, the family started searching for a safe place to rest. They built a small camp beneath the trees, and after ensuring the area was quiet, Javier told Ruben, Teresa, and Isabella to get some sleep while he kept watch. But when nature called, he wandered a short distance into the bushes. As he crouched, 2 pairs of glowing eyes suddenly appeared behind him. 2 small but vicious dinosaurs creeping closer. Just as they lunged at him, something unexpected happened. At that moment, a massive Quetzalcoatlus swooped down from the sky, grabbing them and carrying them high into the air. Because of this unexpected rescue, Xavier's life was saved, though he was left completely shaken and terrified by what had just happened. Meanwhile, when Isabella woke up, she found that the same small mutated dinosaur had returned and was now sleeping right beside her. Surprisingly, she had grown fond of the little creature. The next morning, Zora and the rest of her team moved ahead and reached the territory of the Titanosaurs. The view there was breathtaking. Hundreds of enormous, peaceful herbivores were moving across the land. Since Titanosaurs were plant eaters, there was no threat from them, and Dr. Henry was absolutely thrilled to touch such a gigantic creature for the very first time. Carefully, Zora managed to collect the Titanosaurus DNA, which meant that now only the Quetzalcoatlus DNA remained to be gathered. After that, they could head toward any helipad zone to escape the island safely. To collect the Quetzalcoatlus DNA, they decided to go near its nest, because being a ferocious carnivore, confronting the creature directly would have been suicidal. It would have attacked them instantly. Meanwhile, Ruben and his family were also continuing their journey through the island. During their walk, Isabella finally gave a name to the little mutated dinosaur that kept following them. She called it Dolus. As they continued, Teresa and the others accidentally slipped down a steep slope one after another. Luckily, no one was seriously hurt, and after a bit of walking, they noticed a small laboratory across a river, which, Ruben guessed, might have an emergency raft inside. He asked Teresa to cross the river and check it out. Teresa agreed and carefully made her way across. While exploring near the lab, Teresa's eyes fell on the carcass of a dead dinosaur, which another dinosaur was currently devouring. The second creature soon sensed something much larger nearby and quickly ran off. Teresa slowly turned around and saw that behind the bushes stood a massive Tyrannosaurus Rex, resting. Now, she had to take the raft and return without waking the T-Rex. She quietly grabbed the raft and began dragging it toward the river, but as she unfolded it, the noise accidentally woke the T-Rex. Fortunately, its attention shifted to the river on the opposite side, and it started drinking water instead of noticing her. Teresa seized the opportunity and paddled the raft as fast as she could toward her family. Once she reached them, Everyone quickly climbed aboard and began rowing together, but the sound of the paddles alerted the T-Rex, who began to follow them. Suddenly, the monstrous creature dove into the river and flipped their raft over with its massive head. Miraculously, everyone survived the attack. Ruben, Teresa, and Xavier swam toward a large rock in the river and hid behind it to save themselves. But then Ruben realized, horrified, that Isabella was missing. Since she couldn't swim, she had hidden under the overturned raft. The T-Rex, noticing this, grabbed the raft in its jaws and bit into it viciously. Ruben's heart almost stopped. He feared that Isabella had been eaten alive, but just in time, Isabella let go of the raft, drifting away with the river's current, and managed to reach Ruben safely. The T-Rex tried attacking again, but because the rocks were too close together, it couldn't reach them and eventually went away. Meanwhile, Zora and her team had reached the highest point of the island, where the Quetzalcoatlus nests were located. There, Zora and Henry approached one of the nests filled with eggs, while Lecaric hung from a rope to keep watch and warn them in case the Quetzalcoatlus returned. Henry carefully extracted DNA from one of the eggs, but just then, the Quetzalcoatlus suddenly returned, attacking Lecaric with immense force. Lecaric tried to climb up to safety, but the creature grabbed him mid-air and devoured half of his body before tossing him away. Then it turned toward the nest and attempted to attack Henry as well. Seeing this, Martin and Duncan tried desperately to pull Henry up using the rope. In the struggle, the DNA sample slipped from Henry's hands and fell slightly below them. Henry, risking his life, tried to retrieve it, but the rope snapped and he fell straight down. Zora panicked and hurriedly climbed down to check on him. To her relief, Henry had fallen into a small pond, which saved his life. Soon, Martin and Duncan also climbed down, and miraculously, the DNA samples had landed safely thanks to the parachute mechanism built into the darts. That meant they now had all 3 DNA samples: Mosasaurus, Titanosaurus, and Quetzalcoatlus. All they needed was to reach a safe location, and the best possible place was the old laboratory from 17 years ago, which had a helipad perfect for extraction. Although Duncan was still deeply saddened by Lecaric's death, he continued leading the group toward the lab. At the same time, Ruben and his family also reached the same large abandoned laboratory. Within a short while, Zora, Martin, Henry, and Duncan arrived there too, unknowingly bringing both groups together at the same fateful place. And soon, the rest of the group also arrived. During this time, Zora noticed footprints on the ground, small ones belonging to Isabella. Realizing this, she and Duncan immediately understood that Isabella and her family had safely made it to this place as well. Determined to find them and bring them to safety, the two began searching the area, and by sheer luck, they eventually found them alive. However, as soon as Teresa saw Martin, she instantly told Zora and everyone else the truth, how Martin had tried to kill her by pushing her into the sea. Hearing this, Zora was furious, but before she could do anything, Martin pulled out a gun, pointing it at everyone, and grabbed the suitcase containing the dinosaur DNA samples. Just then, night fell, and the lab's automatic power system kicked in. The lights flickered on and the generators roared to life. Both Zora and Duncan grew worried, realizing that the noise and lights could attract dinosaurs, and that's exactly what happened. Dozens of mutated dinosaurs, created years ago in that very lab, began swarming toward the facility, their growls echoing through the jungle. Panic broke out. Everyone scattered in different directions, running for their lives. Ruben, along with his family, rushed into what used to be the lab's shopping area, where they found shelves full of food and supplies. Meanwhile, Duncan and Henry managed to run inside the main lab, searching for cover. Zora and Martin, however, had to hide under a vehicle outside to save themselves. There, Martin quickly locked the suitcase, then began firing his gun at the dinosaurs trying to reach them. Elsewhere, Isabella once again encountered Dolus, the small, mutated dinosaur that had been following her since the beginning. When she tried to feed it, a much larger dinosaur suddenly approached to attack her. Acting fast, Isabella hid inside a refrigerator, barely managing to survive as the creature sniffed around and eventually left. Once the danger passed, she quietly slipped out and reunited with her family, taking shelter inside a network of large pipes under the lab to stay hidden for a while. Back inside the facility, Duncan and Henry wandered deeper through the corridors and discovered a series of containment chambers, each holding dangerous, mutated dinosaur specimens. The terrifying sight left Henry shaken, finally making him realize just how deadly an uncontrollable genetic mutation had become. Then, by luck, Duncan discovered a route through the underground pipes that led toward the docks, where a motorboat was still stationed, their only possible escape route. Around the same time, a helicopter arrived, hovering above the facility. Hearing the sound, Henry rushed outside, waving his arms, trying to draw their attention. Meanwhile, Martin, still desperate to save himself, found a car key, jumped into a nearby vehicle, and tried to drive away, while Zora, left behind amid the chaos, refused to give up. She got into another vehicle, used it to distract and scare off some dinosaurs, and drove toward the area where she'd seen one of them enter the same pipe system where Reuben and his family had taken refuge. Realizing they might be in danger, she went inside the pipes to help them. Outside, Henry kept signaling to the helicopter, desperately trying to make the rescue team see him. But after 2 minutes passed, the pilot, not spotting anyone, began to fly away. Just as hope was fading, Henry spotted a flare gun on the ground, fired it into the sky, and finally got the helicopter's attention. It began descending toward the lab. But before it could reach the ground, a massive, mutated T-Rex, larger and more terrifying than anything ever seen before, appeared from the darkness. It leapt at the helicopter, tearing it apart like a toy and devouring it piece by piece. Watching this horrifying sight, Henry froze in terror, realizing that this was no ordinary dinosaur. This was something far worse. Now there was no escape by air, and the survivors were completely trapped on the island. Their only hope was to reach the motorboat at the port and make it to the open sea. Henry rushed back into the pipes to warn the others, explaining everything that had happened. The group quickly decided to move through the underground pipes toward the docks. At the same time, Martin, who already knew about the port, also started driving there as fast as he could. Meanwhile, Zora had successfully killed the dinosaur that had entered the pipes earlier and was now leading Isabella and Teresa safely through the tunnels toward the same port where the others were headed. Finally, they reached the end of the pipeline, only to find a huge metal gate blocking the exit. The heavy metal gate at the end of the pipeline could only be opened from the outside. So, taking advantage of her small size, little Isabella bravely squeezed through the bars, crawled out to the other side, and pressed the button, unlocking the gate for everyone. But just as she did, the mutated T-Rex, the same monstrous creature from before, appeared right behind her, ready to devour her alive. At that exact moment, Martin's car engine roared nearby, grabbing the T-Rex's attention. The beast turned toward the sound and charged at Martin instead, crushing the vehicle and ripping him apart. As Martin's arm was torn off, it flew through the air and landed near Zora, who quickly grabbed the suitcase containing the DNA samples that had fallen with it. Without wasting a second, she and the others rushed toward the boat to escape. Meanwhile, Isabella stood frozen, terrified by the gigantic dinosaur roaring behind her. Just as the T-Rex was about to strike, Duncan lit a flare and shouted, drawing the creature's attention toward himself. He began running across the shore, leading the T-Rex away so that Zora and the others could escape safely. Zora screamed for him to come back, tears in her eyes, but Duncan kept going, determined to save everyone else, no matter the cost. A few moments later, his flare finally went out, and all they could hear was the terrifying roar of the mutant T-Rex echoing through the jungle. Zora, heartbroken, had no choice but to sail away without him. But then, just when all hope seemed lost, a new flare shot up from the other side of the shore. It was Duncan. He had somehow survived, managing to escape through the rocks and make it to safety. Overjoyed, the group pulled him aboard, and together they set off into the open sea, finally leaving the cursed island behind. As dawn broke, the sky turned golden, and a playful pod of dolphins appeared, swimming alongside their boat, a peaceful sign that their nightmare was truly over. On the deck, Zora made a promise. She and Henry would still create the heart medicine using the DNA samples, but unlike Martin, they would sell it at a price the poor could afford, saving countless lives rather than profiting from their suffering. Everyone smiled, relieved and hopeful, as the boat glided over the calm ocean waves, the horrors of the island slowly fading behind them. So friends, imagine this. You're stranded on an island crawling with dinosaurs, danger at every turn, and survival hanging by a thread. What would you do first? Would you fight, hide, or try to outsmart the beasts? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know your survival plan. If this wild adventure kept you on the edge of your seat, then don't forget to smash that like button. Let's hit a massive target of 500 likes for this thrilling story. And hey, if you're new here and love intense, action-packed tales filled with suspense and emotion, then make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because even crazier stories are on the way. Until next time, stay brave, stay curious, and never stop exploring the unknown. See you soon in another heart-pounding adventure.